hello 6th grade. We're going to go over the answers for chapters. I'm going to go all the way through 6, 1 through 6. So if there's something you haven't done, be sure you pause and just listen to the answers. Okay, so chapters 1 and 2, I'm titled In Which We Observe a Hair-Raising Event, chapter 1, and chapter 2, wherein the prince cannot write his name. I'll go over vocabulary answers first, and here we go with vocabulary. Number 1, the prince wore velvet breeches and silk stockings. Breeches. Number 2, he promised to leave promptly, but he did the contrary and stayed for days. Contrary means the opposite. 3, Jemmy resided in a small chamber. Means a room. 4, she was uncomfortable in a drafty spot near the window. Drafty. 5, the injured boy was obliged to his friends for their helpfulness. That means you feel like you owe somebody something. Number 6, my father was furious when I lost the keys to his new car. Furious. 7, after he antagonized his classmates, the bully felt contrite and apologized. Contrite means sorry. 8, when most of her students failed the test, the teacher was filled with exasperation. Exasperation. 9, the small white ferrets were used to hunt rats. 10, please fetch my slippers, requested Grandma. Fetch. Go and get. 11, Prince Brat was annoyed that Jemmy refused to bawl when whipped. B-A-W-L, bawl, means to cry. 12, the prince smirked in a self-satisfied manner when the tutor hit Jemmy. No, I'm wrong. The prince, no, I think I'm right. Yes, I'm right. Prince smirked. Smirk, you know the smirk. I think we had that as a spelling word or a vocabulary word. Sometimes smirk, like, make that face like, you're getting what you deserve, kind of a thing. And number 13, the king was angry when he heard his son cackle at the mean joke. Cackle is laugh. 14, his loud voice bellowed across the room. Bellow, to spread out. All right, those are vocabulary for chapters 1 and 2. Let's go over the comprehension questions. Chapter 1, in which we observe a hair-raising event. How did Prince Brat earn his nickname, and why wasn't he afraid to act in this manner? He earned his nickname as Prince Brat because he was a brat. He did mean things to people. He played mean jokes on them. He would go around and pull off the powdered wigs off of the people sitting around. And he wasn't afraid to do any of these things because nobody could touch him. He couldn't be disciplined at all. So he had a whipping boy for that. Anytime he did something, the whipping boy would get punished for what the prince did. Question 2, why did the prince call Jemmy, and it's Jemmy, not Jimmy, Jemmy, the worst whipping boy he ever had? Because Jemmy refused to cry out or bawl or make any noise when he got hurt. The prince wanted to see him cry and scream and be miserable, but Jemmy wouldn't do that. Jemmy's very proud and strong. Chapter 2, wherein the prince cannot write his name. Number 1, explain the reason that the prince was not eager to learn. Because he can always get somebody else to do it for him. He doesn't have to know anything. He's got servants to do everything for him. Remember on these, when they have a lot of lines, you don't necessarily have to fill in all of the lines with the answer. And number 2, cite or give evidence that although Jemmy was just a rat catcher, he was an intelligent boy. Well, while the prince sat off and did nothing, Jemmy learned to read, write, and do his sums. In other words, he could read, write, and do arithmetic because he listened while the tutor was teaching the prince. The prince does nothing. Jemmy, smart boy, is learning the whole time, and this will be important later in the story. All right, let's go on to chapter 3 and 4, vocabulary. Remember, you were to use your dictionary to define the words as they are used in the story. So if you have mistakes, just correct them as you can pause and correct as we go. Number 1, astonishment, surprise. Number 2, clattered, made a loud noise. Number 3, clutched, grab hold of. I'm clutching the pen. I clutched it. Now I let it go. Number 4, cobbled. Cobbled in this story is used as streets made of brick. There are still some left in St. Louis, and I think there's a few around here, but mostly they're paving over streets. Streets used to be cobbled. That's how they made streets. They used bricks. Number 5, cutthroat. Oh, a person who would, murder you maybe for something that you owned. Murderer. 6, dreadful, horrible, awful, terrible. 7, hollow, empty. 8, gallows. A gallows is something they hang people on. It's the wooden structure for hanging. You know when you play hangman and you draw the little wooden thing like this? That's a gallows. Number 9, insolent, rude, disrespectful. Number 10, protested, to speak out against something. 11, ruffian, a person who wants to do you harm. Not a good person, unlawful person. 12, thrashed. That would mean beaten. Jemmy was often thrashed for what the prince had done. All right, let's go over the quiz time questions for chapter 3, the runaways. Number 1, why did the prince decide to run away, and how did Jemmy try to dissuade or talk him out of it? Well, the prince decided to run away because he was bored. And Jemmy tries to talk him out of it by telling him, hey, ain't you scared of the dark? You can't even sleep without a candlelit. How are you going to be out there on the streets when it's dark? So he's trying to talk him out of it. You see, this is interesting because it's all going to turn around later on. The prince is bored and doesn't want to live there anymore. And now Jemmy, who you'd think would want to get out, is kind of saying, hey, why do you want to do this? Don't you want to stay? So number 2, explain how the prince's decision could endanger Jemmy. Well, if Jemmy and the prince are found together, people might think that Jemmy talked the prince into leaving, or that Jemmy even kidnapped the prince. So Jemmy could be in danger. Chapter 4, containing Hands in the Fog. 1, what plan did Jemmy devise to get away from the prince? Well, he was going to sneak away in the fog and run back to the sewers, because that's where he knew how to live. And 2, how was Jemmy's plan interrupted? Well, a couple of cutthroats came along and found the boys and are holding them. Which brings us to chapter 5 and 6 vocabulary. Chapter 5 and 6 vocabulary. I'm going to use the answer key so I don't have to go back and forth on the paper. All right, here we go. Chapter 5 and 6. Number 1, bleated. F, uttered a sound similar to that of a sheep. Number 2, copper. M, a coin. You know, copper, penny. They don't make pennies out of full copper anymore, but they used to. 3, K. 3 is desperate. K means hopeless, reckless. 4, genuine. I, real, sincere. 5, highwayman. H, one who robs travelers. You know, they'd be on the side of the highwayman. Number 6, hospitality. A, cordial and generous treatment of guests. So if you're cordial, you're polite. Number 7, moldy. B, musty, stale. Number 8, outlaw. N, a habitual criminal, a fugitive from the law. Number 9, pheasant. That would be C, game bird with a long tail. Number 10, rickety. D, shaky, likely to fall apart. Number 11, rogue. E, rascal, a scoundrel. Number 12, thatched. That would be J, covered with reeds or palm fronds. Often people's roofs would be thatched. They would be made with things like that. And then 13, trifle. G, small amount, something of little value. And 14, a vagabond is L, a wanderer or a person with no permanent home. All right, chapter 5, Hold Your Nose, Billy, and Cutwater. Why was Hold Your Nose, Billy an apt or good name for the big man? Because he ate garlic all the time and his breath stank. So he stunk. He probably didn't shower very often or bathe very often either, but it was mostly because he was always eating garlic, and garlic gives you bad breath. Number 2, find an example that shows Jemmy's reasoning skills to be superior to those of the prince. Well, right away, Jemmy's figuring out that these cutthroats aren't very smart, and he's going to be able to devise a plan to get away from them. But the prince is giving himself away. He's like, don't you know who I am? I'm the prince. You should treat me like I'm your prince, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't get it yet, but he will later, that he's not that popular with the people. But, so the prince just doesn't think logically, whereas Jemmy is very logical. Number 3, Cutwater and Billy describe evidence that led them to believe that royalty was present. Describe their findings. Well, they find the king's own crest, which would be his symbol on something in the bag as they're pawing through it looking for things. And then, now the cutthroats are a little bit smarter than Jemmy gave them credit for, because in which the plot thickens, Number 1, what caused Billy to state, "We can be richer and dog rich"? In other words, so rich you won't be able to believe it, because he's figuring now that they do have the prince and they can hold him for ransom. Problem is, they're going to get the wrong guy. They're not sure which one is actually the prince. But that's due to Jemmy, and that's coming up later. All right, so those are chapters 1 through 6. I hope you're enjoying the story. I hope you're reading it carefully. There's a lot in this story, a lot of humor. I enjoyed this story a lot. I hope you are too. Be sure you email me with questions. I'm happy to help. Even if I go off somewhere in the car, I take the books with me. So if someone has a question, I've got them there, and I can look up and give you a page number to look at or a little hint. So enjoy the book, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.